What you're about to hear is an anonymous response that I made to the Federal Trade Commission regarding their new plans for enforcing COPPA on the internet in 2020. If you're not sure what all of the context about this stuff is, I recommend that you watch Chad Tronick's video, which is very informative, and which has a link to it in the description. And by the way, I apologize for just having this static image this whole time, but I really couldn't think of an expression that would sum up my feelings toward this whole thing, so I'm just going to go with carefully neutral. It's clear from statements made by FTC officials and the responses taken by private media platforms like YouTube related to recent discussions of COPPA that though the act has nominally been enforced for 19 years, the approach being considered by the FTC starting on January 1, 2020 for enforcing COPPA is radically different from how it has been enforced in the past. YouTube's response to your proposed rulings, a for children identifier that would prevent engagement with a creator's video, cut it off from YouTube's promotion algorithm, and make it nearly impossible to effectively monetize the video, is a drastic change that comes across as a punishment for those who identify as creators of content aimed at children. It is my understanding that this change stems directly from the draconian legal actions the FTC intends to initiate against both platforms and creators who fail to mark their content as unmistakably for children or not for children. I argue that this approach will stifle content appropriate for children on YouTube, subject tens of thousands of creators to mistaken and excessive punishment, and jeopardize free and open debate for adults on the internet. The most honest and legitimate creators of content for children on YouTube will be the first to mark their videos for children and suffer the corresponding penalties. Far from making YouTube safer for children, this will hide and stifle content that is actually appropriate for children, while leaving up subversive and predatory content from creators who abuse the system. The legal struggles to take this content down could potentially take months or even years, given the massive amount of content on YouTube, and in the meantime, children will continue to be exposed to abusive content. If the intent of COPPA was to make the internet safer for minors, your new regulations and the responses made by private companies will subvert the intention of the law even while nominally upholding it. As for my second point, there are tens of thousands of channels on YouTube that make content which, under COPPA's vague guidelines, could be inappropriately identified as for children when the actual target audience is either adults or a general audience only marginally including children. Bright colors, words like fun, and fast-moving graphics are not an indication that content is aimed at children. If they were, nearly every television news program would be considered for children. If you seriously intend to take legal action against every internet content creator whose content might be considered for children under COPPA's definition, you're setting yourself up for decades of costly litigation, a major backlash from citizens who will be inappropriately fined and punished for crimes they did not commit, and a general disrespect and disgust for the actions and even the existence of the Federal Trade Commission. For my third point, I would point out that the internet is one of the few public institutions left where free and open discussion exists at all, despite constant attacks from authorities and activists to stifle it. YouTube's new regulations for content that is marked for children prevent anyone from commenting on a video, regardless of whether those comments would be child-safe or not, and also push the video into obscurity by cutting it off from the promotion algorithm. Since videos marked not for children would be subject to legal attacks that, as I pointed out in the last paragraph, may strike anyone at any time, even if their content is generally intended for adult consumption, content creators will be pressured into marking all videos as for children, to protect themselves from this unwarranted attention. This would greatly expand the number of videos in which open discussion is not permitted, and discriminate against videos that do allow comments. Since the idea of putting stricter regulations on internet content has only come up recently, in stark contrast to the relevant law itself, which is 2 decades old, I can only assume that this idea stems from recent concerns about children being taken in by inappropriate adult content. I understand the concern that federal regulators have about this issue, but I think that attempting to resolve it by banning as much content as possible is misguided. Children often seek out adult content inappropriately, despite warnings made by content providers that they should not, and if their parents do not intervene to stop that behavior, no one will. Many children under 13 lied to YouTube in order to access YouTube content. That this happened should not be blamed on YouTube or content creators, but rather the children themselves and their parents. Please do not hound the content created on the internet into non-existence. The regulations enforced previously were more than adequate to protect children. What is being proposed now would hurt them, and everyone else as well. And by the way, even though I am a cartoon, I am not intended for children. Dilbert is not for children. Peanuts wasn't originally for children. That's all.